Hey everyone, Christine Beatty here. It's a beautiful spring day here in Victoria, so I thought I'd take a few minutes to give you a little bit of a tour of my pasture track setup. So if you're not familiar with the idea of the track system, the idea is to make the most of the pasture space you have available and restrict where the horses are able to go so that they actually have to walk more ground in their daily routines. So instead of having their hay and their water and their shelter all in the same general vicinity, which ends up getting pretty trampled down, the idea is to spread everything out around the perimeter of the area, or around any sort of shape you like, really, so that they actually have to walk a greater distance in between all of the things that are important to them. So I've had this set up here for a couple of years now. Currently I've just got my one horse Tony and my two goats living with him. But you can do this kind of setup with any number, any mix of animals. And it's really quite simple. So I'm just going to take you for a little walk through and show you how I've got things set up. I'm going to show you some of the things I really like about it. I'm going to show you some of the things I would do differently next time and just try to give you some ideas. So this is the first track system that I've set up myself. It's really simple, it's really basic. So I'm hoping I can give you some ideas to get started in your own space. So the space I've got to work with is a little under an acre, and it's just a big rectangle. So I've created my track by running a single strand of electric fencing pretty well parallel to the perimeter fence line the whole way around. And that's just created one big loop. So now I've got a gate into the interior pasture right here up by the barn. And I've also got the water buckets here nice and close to the hose. I've got a second gate into the pasture in line with this gate just up ahead. Now, I've done this fence line just using plastic step-in posts and a single hot wire, and this works great. If you're in a position to put in a more permanent fence, I would definitely suggest that, because the plastic posts, as you can see here, do take a bit of a beating over time, and you know, they require a little bit of TLC now and then. A permanent fence would just be lower maintenance once you find a system that works for you. Now, as we come into the trees here, you can see the track opens up. Now, what I did when I was laying this fence line is I just followed the natural line of the pasture that was already there, because the grass doesn't grow right underneath these big fir trees. So I just followed the grass line that was already in place, and that created this nice kind of forest hangout where Tony quite likes coming in here for a nap. The ground is really soft, so he likes to curl up just in this clearing right here. They get quite a bit of natural shelter in here as well. Even through the winter time, these big trees are excellent shelter. And I don't worry too much about the low-hanging branches up here. Tony actually quite appreciates them to scratch all over his body. He's got certain branches that he'll use to itch different parts of his back. And when I watch him walk through here, he's got a very clear route that he always takes. So I've never found the low branches to be a concern. And I've got the hay down in this corner here today. Hi, Tony. I move the hay around every day just to keep it interesting. I have different spots that I like sometimes in different weather. I'll put the hay in the trees if it's real hot. Hi, honey. Now, I've done the track somewhere between 12 and 16 feet wide for most of it. And that's wide enough Although next time I would probably give it another few feet, because I do find that it's a little bit too narrow for Tony to turn around comfortably on the spot. So certainly if you have multiple horses sharing a track, just giving a little bit more space than I did this time around is probably the way to go. And you can see here where a wooden fence post would do much better in the corner. But that's all right. You can also have some fun with the ground and the footing. Well, I haven't done much on this track. The roots through here kind of create some natural obstacles, which, you know, force Tony to think about where his feet are landing as he walks, which is an excellent skill to be developing. You could put a big pile of sand down in an area. You can put different types of gravel, river rock. I've seen people do big logs, especially up a hillside. I've seen people have water crossings. You know, the sky's the limit, so go ahead and get creative. The more variety that you can provide for your horses, the more, you know, the more interesting their daily life is going to be. Now, the one thing that's not quite ideal about my setup is I do have the manure pile right here on the track. That's just one of those things that when you're leasing a space, you work with what's available to you. But to be honest, as much as it wouldn't be my preference, I've actually found it to be not as bad as I would have thought. You know, in terms of flies and parasites and these sort of issues that you'd typically think of, I haven't actually found it to be that problematic. So that brings us back up to the barn. Now I'll show you a little bit how I've actually set this up. So I've got, I'll take you back here. So up to the barn, I've got the electric box just inside the door here. So you can see where I've got one wire coming out to do the perimeter fence. And then I've got an insulated cable coming out. I've just coiled up the excess there instead of cutting it. And it goes right underground. I dug a trench a couple feet deep and just ran the line through a PVC pipe straight to the first fence post right here. So when I take you over to this post, you can see where the insulated wire comes up out of the ground up the fence post, and then I've just connected it onto the wire. And I've had this set up for a couple of years, so I've definitely had to compensate for bending fence posts and things, which is why you see some of the wires wrapped around the posts, which, you know, it's not perfect, but it's an easy solution that doesn't involve a whole ton of work. So that works pretty well for me. Now, as far as the pasture itself goes, I'm going to let it grow a little bit more before I start letting Tony on it. Now, I've got the goats in there too, and you can see I've left the single wire high enough that they can just walk under it. Just because the amount of additional wires that it would take to keep the goats out was just going to be more trouble than it was worth. And you can also see, I'll take you back over here, how Tony does an excellent job keeping the grass immediately under the fence eaten right down, so I definitely don't have to worry about weeds or grass interfering with my electric fencing. Another couple weeks, once the pasture gets a little bit taller, then I'll start letting Tony on it for short spurts in the morning. I don't have enough pasture here to be able to really rely on it as feed through the summer, but I'll let him have a little bit here and there. So I hope that gives you some ideas. It's just a very simple way to get it started. It definitely does not have to be complicated, and there's no one right way to do it either. This is what's worked for me for the last couple of years, and I'd love to hear what works for you if you have your own track set up. Love to see pictures or video in the comments. If you have questions, by all means, ask away. And I will leave you with that for today.